So thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be in a rainy Copenhagen. The last time I was here was in 2009, covering the climate summit, and it was it was a snowy Copenhagen. So I hope one day I will see the sun here. So anyway, I'm Adeline Marcos. I'm a science journalist, and I work for the Spanish Scientific News Agency, which is a public agency which belongs to the Ministry of Science. And actually, I work with a group of journalists, and our aim is to communicate science to the public through the media. So actually, every time we publish an article, it's going to be spread into the national media, but also to the international media, so everywhere. So I want to start with this image of a hadrosaur, duck-billed dinosaur which lived 70 million years ago. So maybe you can't notice something wrong in this animal, but actually if you look at his foot, he has a disease, it's a tumor, and actually he has also tail fractures that you will see in the next animation that I will give you, but I will explain it to you. So, as we are in a cinematheque, I think it will be interesting to show you this animation. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed it because it was a very hard work with the scientist, with the journalist, and also with the illustrator, because that animation reflected actually a paper. And what we found at the beginning, when we select the paper, we had these images. So as you can see, they are not very attractive because they are fossils, and those fossils belong to that dinosaur. We also had this one, and also the paper. So these three images that I showed you are the result, are the base of what we did with this animation and with this piece of news. So it took several days to be able to get to this piece of news. So actually we had to have a very good communication with the scientist and with the illustrator, and we actually published it in sync, and then we spread it into the international media. The result is that it was published in Science et Avenir, which is a very important magazine in France, and also in, for example, in Daily Mail, which is one of the most read newspapers in the UK. So this is one example of what we do at the agency and how we communicate with scientists. And actually, to communicate science, there are 3 simple rules that we try to apply every time that we think about writing a piece of news. So actually, the first one is that we cannot force anyone to be interested in science. Actually, as Tim Radford said, the science editor of Guardian newspaper, is that we are not writing for other scientists, we're not writing for the editor or even for our old teacher, not even for our mother. Actually, we are writing for the people who are going in the metro, for example, and they will stop reading us at any moment. So we have to actually know before writing for who we are writing. The second rule is that, according to study, they are not magical words. Not all the papers are suitable to become a piece of news. Sometimes they are very technical, or maybe we know that they are not going to interest people in general, or sometimes the results are not conclusive in that paper. So actually, as journalists, we have to be reliable, and we have the responsibility to choose the science that we go to the public. And the third one, and I will repeat it during my talk, is that we don't have to tell the reader everything. We know that the paper and the research sometimes are very complete and they have a lot of data and information, but we know that for the reader sometimes some information is not very useful for the comprehension of the whole study. So how we choose a scientific article? Actually, the first step is by the scientific relevance of the study. Actually, after more than 10 years working at the agency, we have some intuition, which is maybe sometimes complicated to get, but also we look at the impact of the journal in which the article is published. Sorry, I didn't put it. And also we contrast with other scientists to see if that paper is important or not. But we are also guided by the informative interest for the public. And actually, here we have multiple variables. Maybe we can look at the curiosity or the closeness or even the social or political interest of this paper. Actually, with the pandemic, this second point was very important because actually we had to look at the interests of the public in, for example, talking about the disease, not only in the medical aspect, but also in the social one, the political one, etc. So at the end, what we have to do is to ask what interests people and connect it with science. When I say interest, I will also say worry, fascinate, touch, move, or also excite. Actually, I always say that any topic can be written with a scientific perspective. And anything that is happening in the world, we can put it in a scientific perspective, and it can become a piece of news. What happened in the real world? We have a lot of stress as journalists, so there are many. And so actually, sometimes we need to have a good press release from the institution. And it's the institution itself that will work with the scientists to get the information from the paper, and that they will send it to the media. We have to be able also to speak with the researcher. Sometimes we find a paper very interesting and we want to write about, but sometimes the scientist is not available. So, but we need to have quotes, and we need to be able to talk with him or with her. We also have to be able to have access to the paper. Sometimes we only have the title and the abstract. And also to have access to the embargoed information, to have more time to complete and to work with this information before publishing it. And one of the most important things, even if you don't think about it, it's the good pictures. We can't publish anything without a picture. And maybe like this one is very nice, but sometimes the scientific topics are very complicated to illustrate. So if we don't have a picture, we will use an illustration, an infographic, or even a drawing, but it has to be published with something. Okay, so between journalists and scientists, there are some differences, and sometimes it's important to know how the structure, for example, of the paper is made to improve that communication between us. So actually, the news story and the paper do not have the same structure. As journalists, what we are going to focus is we will look at the conclusions and the results of this paper, and that will be our headlines and the first paragraph. Actually, it's like the contrary. Actually, when I take a paper, the first thing that I do is to go to the conclusions and the results to see what will be my headline, even if the headline is one of the most complicated things, parts of a piece of news. Internet has, even if we can't imagine it, has word limits. So actually, we have to know that we are limited in space, even for journalists. And in that space, we will concentrate and condense all the information that we want to write about. As I told you, the headline in the journalistic world is very important because it's like the entrance of the piece of news, and it will pique the interest of the readers. On the contrary, when you take a paper, the title sometimes is not very attractive, even if I think nowadays it's changing and the scientists are playing with their titles, and sometimes they are quite attractive. And even I look at the titles in order to have some guidance or to have some reference and to have at the end the headline. As I told you before, journalists, we need codes. And when I said that we need codes, is that we need the scientists to talk with their own words. Sometimes when I read them and I contact them, they say, okay, I send you the abstract, but what I need is to explain their research with their own words. And that's what I'm going to put in the article. Only part of the research will be emphasized, not all. There are some parts like the methods or some analyses that are not useful for the reader, and we have to take that in account. No one can force the scientists to talk about their work, but when I find a paper, interesting paper for our readers, we need to be able to write about it, even if the scientists don't want to participate. And actually, at the end, when we check facts, there are several ways in the journalism and science. So again, we don't have to tell everything, or we will bore not only the scientists to the journalists, but also to the journalists, from the journalist to the reader. Because actually there's a problem, is that the public has the right not to read, but we don't have the right to scare them away. And I will put you a very clear example. In a battle or a confrontation between media and scientists with the headline, which is, as I told you, one of the most important parts. Oh, sorry. Is it working? Here. No, I cannot play. Okay. So actually it was the media proposed a headline and the scientist was correcting it. And at the end it was like a paragraph as a headline. And actually the media, the journalist erased everything. It put the shortest the headline that it could exist at the end. So sorry not to be able to show you that. So sometimes when we have doubt about how important is a science outreach from the scientist, we have to show them that even if sometimes they say that it's not their priority and that it's a waste of time and they don't have time to communicate the science, actually there is an example. For example, this one is an article that we published, and after the publication of the article, as you can see, this paper had more impact among the scientific community that it had before the publication in the media. So at the end, I think we will manage, as I show you this image of the black hole, we will manage to have the science in the front page of all the papers of the world at the same time. So I hope one day, if we improve the communication between scientists and journalists, we will have not only these flashy and remarkable discoveries in the front page, but regular science. And I think we will only be able to have it if we improve this communication and we know how to tell and communicate science through the media to the public, because at the end, the more informed is the society, the more support science will have. Thank you very much.